everybody, in today's demonstration I'm going to be showing you how to get more from one of these things, which is a drum carder. They're a really useful, versatile piece of kit that you can use for processing fleece, transforming old bits of fibre, creating brand new blends and doing some really clever things. So I'm going to be showing you a few drum carding basics if you've never used a drum carder before and would like to see what they're capable of doing, but I'm also going to be showing you a few more interesting techniques so that if you already have a drum carder, it might give you some more ideas about how you can experiment with it and use it for some slightly more advanced techniques and use it for some slightly more interesting methods. Let's get straight to action. We're going to card some fibre so that you can see my method of carding. There are lots of different ways of doing this. If you have a different way that you use on your drum carder and it works for you, you carry on doing it that way. If this is my method, it works for me. There's no real right or wrong way, providing you're getting fibre out of it that you're happy with. So I'm just using these bits of semi-solid dyed comb tops. They're just odds and ends that are left over, which is what drum carders are really good for, is turning all these scrappy pieces into something that you can spin into a larger project. My method that I like to use is, rather than trying to open and tease this fibre out, is that I take hold of the end of the fibre and I pull like that, and I've now got a soft, fluffy, staple length of fibre that I can see through. The old advice used to be that if you put newsprint down on your feed tray, you should be able to read through it. Most people end up struggling with their drum carder because they put too much fibre on it. So we can lay out our fibre on the feed tray. I'm working this at a slightly funny angle so that we can get the camera in place. But if we turn the handle like that, you can see the fibre being pulled through and deposited onto the main drum. I never clamp my drum carders to the table. In my opinion, you shouldn't need to. If you are having to turn the handle with so much force that it is moving about on the table, you have put too much fibre on the liquor in, or it was not already open enough. If this liquor in and this feed drum, if you put too much fibre going through it, it will end up not doing a very good job of carding it, or it will end up pulling on the fibres and stretching them until the fibres themselves go snap. And that's the point at which you start to get neps. So it's always important to keep the quantity of fibre on this feed tray really small, really nice and open. If you do that, you can turn the handle at a reasonable speed, and as you're turning it, you will feel some resistance and feedback from this handle. If it's feeling like there's more resistance, go more slowly. You don't always need to be going at 90 miles an hour, but by putting a nice thin layer on the tray, I can turn at a reasonably fast speed. So it's one of those, it takes a little bit more time, but means you can go more quickly in other bits. So like just then, I'm feeling a bit more resistance because I probably put a slightly too much fibre on the tray. But if I just slow my hands down, I give this part here a chance to work, everything ends up being just fine. So we'll put a little bit more of this red on. And we keep going like that until the drum on the back is as full as we want it to be. You will get the manufacturer saying you can fit X amount of fibre on these drums, and it will entirely depend upon the type of fibre that you are carding. If you're carding something that's very bouncy, this drum will fill up much more quickly than it would do if you're carding something with lots of silk or a very fine stapled fibre. So the amount to put on is until it's full. You'll get some that have brushes that push the fibres down onto the drum. They're great. If you don't have one, you can just use a slicker brush in its place and you can run it over like that to push the fibres down, or you can use a paintbrush. I've used like a soft bristled scrubbing brush type thing. That works as well. So that's the very basics of drum carding. I'm going to set the camera up now so that you can see exactly what's going on at this point here, so that you can tell whether you've got your drum carder set up and working properly. So we're now looking right down into the gap between the liquor in and the drum, and you can just about see how close the teeth are together, but they shouldn't be touching. On the feed tray I've just put some fibre, so I'm turning the handle, the liquor in is turning, pulling that fibre on, and we can see that it's just being slowly transferred from one drum to the other, and as it gets transferred it's been teased and straightened, and it's all ended up on that drum and not stuck on our liquor in. Having covered some of the more basic techniques, what we're now going to do is we're now going to try something a little bit more complicated. We're going to create a bat that's got stripes of colour running off it. Now you can just take that off and use it and spin it as a bat, but I'm also going to show you how to use a diz so that you can use your drum carder to create some gradient roving. So I've rummaged through my bits and pieces of stash, and I found some colours that are similar to that first bit of carding that we were doing that are going to progressively flow along as the next sequence in the colour wheel. So I've got a pinky purple one, my next bundles are blues, and I found myself some blue silk to put in, and the next one along are going to be these green shades, and I found a little bit of green silk and a little bit of blue silk as well to go in there. So I'm going to create those bats, and then I'm going to show you what the next stage is going to be. We've now got our 3 bats carded. We've got the pink purple one, which you saw me doing at the very beginning, and I've now put together those piles of fibre into a blue one and a green one. They're now ready to form the stripes of our gradient on here. Now obviously this width of fibre is not going to fit onto this drum, so we need to take these bits of fibre and we need to break them up into smaller pieces. Now if you know how much fibre your drum carder takes, what you can always do is you can always weigh it out and get very precise with it, but you don't have to. You can do this in a far more freeform manner. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull a strip off the side of this bat here. So these have only been through the carder once, and I've now got myself a thin strip of fibre which is going to be roughly 1/3 of the width on there. I'm going to do the same with this one, so we just go down the side, we pull off a strip, okay, so we've got 3 narrow strips of fibre. Now this is still too much fibre to be putting through this drum carder without doing some teasing, some opening. Remember, we want thin layers on here. So all we're going to do is we're just going to draft and tease out our fibre slightly into a thinner strip. If you break it, it doesn't matter, you can just overlap it as we card and carry on. But this is just going to give us that thin strip of fibre that we need to get really good results from our drum carder. Okay, I'm just going to tack that on there to keep it out of the way. Next one. And the green one. So the beauty of doing it this way is that you end up with a lot of overlapping of colours between the stripes, and that's going to give you a much softer, more subtle effect. So that's the order they're going on: pink, blue, green. Let's get those to be feeding on. And as we turn the handle on our drum carder, our strips of fibre get pulled through and onto the drum. You need to take care as you're doing this that you watch that the fibre doesn't get wrapped around the axles of your liquor in. There are some drum carders where getting to these parts here is an absolute nightmare. So just pay attention. You can see I'm just keeping everything moving into one side. If we want to get a little bit of overlap, we can move everything over and closer together, and then we can move it over to The other side, again, just watching the edge of your liquor in, making sure that everything doesn't get in the wrong order, and you keep going like that until your drum is completely full. We filled up our drum with all of our fibre. We could possibly fit a little bit more onto here, but not a huge amount, and still keep it nice and light and fluffy. And we're now ready to start using one of these things, which is a diz. So a diz is simply a disc of some sort with some holes in of some different sizes. You can use shells with holes in, you can use buttons, you can make holes in milk bottle caps. It doesn't really matter. You can get ones that have a curved and domed shape. I found it makes next to no difference. The main thing about using one on a drum carder is that the hole needs to be slightly larger than you might want to use if you're working with a set of combs or similar, because this fibre is really quite fluffy and we don't want it too thin and skinny. It becomes unworkable and it just drifts apart if we're not careful. So a hole of about that size, which is just under a centimetre, that works really fine. And we work our way along to the doffing strip, and I am right-handed and I start on the right-hand side of the drum, and we're going to slowly unpeel this fibre from this drum in one continuous strip where it will gradually change colour as we move our way across. If you're left-handed, you may want to start on the left side of the drum and you'll work your way around in a spiral in the other direction. Some people work from the back of the drum. I've seen videos of other people demonstrating this technique. That works. I do it from the front. That also works. There's no right or wrong way. So all we do to start off with is from this doffing strip, we peel off a wisp of fibre. We're going to poke it through our diz, and the diz just helps to control the thickness of the yarn that we make. Now here's how I do it. I hold the diz between my thumb and my forefinger right up against the tines of the drum carder, so this diz is touching those tines. My other fingers are going to help move this drum around, and this hand is going to be teasing and gripping and pulling on this fibre, and I keep my hand right up against the diz. If I move my hand too far back, I pull the fibre and draft it open. So we work our way around, our diz remains in contact with the drum. These fibres are helping to turn everything round. As you're pulling it off, make sure that you don't accidentally end up feeding it back through the liquor in and recarding it. And it should all just tease off, so we're starting to change into the bit that's got hints of blue. And most of the turning of the drum is actually done by the pulling of this hand. I'm taking a really firm grip on this fibre. So we've now got bits of green and bits of blue. And you can put any number of colours you want. On a normal width drum carder I can do up to 6. On the super wide ones you could do 8, maybe even 10 or 12. 4 is about as large as I like on these smaller drums. This bit here, we're just starting to leave a few wisps of fibre behind in this blue section. So I'm just going to use my porcupine quill just to lift them up ever so slightly so that they get pulled in. Particularly at this section, we can just poke them through like that, making sure we're not getting caught on our liquor in. But if you leave, the amount of fibre that's been left behind there is really pretty minimal. It's maybe 1 or 2 grams. It's probably where it got caught on a bent tine. As I say, my drum carders are a little bit battered because they get chucked in the back of vans and carried into village halls for workshops. So we've nearly gone all the way around. If If you want to create repeatable versions of this so that you can ply them together and get them to line up and match, you can weigh out the fibre. Okay, we'll leave that bit there. So we've now got our bits of fibre. I'm just going to chain it up as I would a piece of comb top. So it's just like using your hand as a giant crochet hook. And that just keeps it all nice and neat, ready for storage. So that's what we've made. Let me just move the drum carder out of the way. And I'll put that on the table so that you can see it. So as we spin this from one end to the other, we're going to get a really nice gradual change in colours, starting with the green all the way around to this lovely pretty purple colour, and we won't get any abrupt colour changes. You can use any combinations of fibre you like with this technique. I've just put together some mixtures of different types of wool and some silk, but you can add texture, you can add sparkle, you can do it with fleece. Anything you can put on a drum carder you can use with this technique. It doesn't have to be a gradient, you can just do single colours and then peel it off with a diz to give you a strip of fibre that's ready to spin. The next thing that I'm going to card is I'm going to do something with a little bit more texture in it. I'm going to put in some bits of silk noil, I'm going to use some of these sparkly bits of Angelina. I might even see if I can find a little bit of fleece to put in, and I'm going to card up a bat that we're then going to use to make some pony style rolags. Of the exact terminology is one I think we're still trying to exactly work out as a spinning community. They're the sort that you often see being made on a blending board, but you can use a drum carder to make them, and that means that you only need one bit of kit, and the bit of kit you need is a more versatile one, as opposed to a blending board which actually doesn't do a very good job of mixing and carding up the fibres, particularly if they're a bit more compacted or a bit more stuck together. So it's a way of creating those lovely spirally type rolags. You can do it where you create a striped bat like we did in the previous section that we then peeled off with a diz, so that you'll end up with little rolags that change colour reasonably regularly, or you can just do it as one semi-colour, and I'm going to show you how we peel those off using knitting needles and bits of dowel, so that we can create those little rolags that we could use for more long draw style spinning. Our fibres now gone through the drum carder again, so we've now got everything nicely mixed and blended together, and it's ready for us to start winding off our little pony rolags. So there's different tools and ways you can do this. I like to do a combination of a wooden dowel and a smooth knitting needle. I found that if I used two wooden dowels, I could end up with the dowel getting stuck in the middle of the pony and not sliding off. If you've got a smoother, shinier dowel, you probably won't have that problem. The size of dowel and knitting needle you use is up to you. I like them to have slightly more loft and air to them than I've seen some that are being made. The smaller the size dowel that you use, the tighter the roll will be. So the first thing we need to do is we need to just get ourselves a wisp of fibre, and it's easiest to do this at the point of the doffing strip. So we can see just how little fibre I'm pulling off here, because we're trying to tease this off in very thin layers rather than huge, great big ones. So making sure we're even roughly all the way along, and that's providing us with the centre of our first roll. So we take that bit and we sandwich it between our knitting needle and our dowel, and we start to turn, and as we start to turn we pull, and we're pulling backwards against the resistance of the drum. And by pulling backwards, we're wrapping this fibre on quite nice and evenly and tightly. And the point at which you stop is another one of those, it depends and it's your personal preference. But what you want to make sure that you do is that you're not staying in one spot for too long. So as I've rolled there, I'm turning the drum a bit before I then pull again. So I roll and I'm keeping moving around the drum. If you don't keep moving around the drum, if you stay in one spot for too long, you end up running out of fibre to wind on. So I'm going to stop there and wind. So we've now got our fibre wrapped around our dowel and our rolag. If I pull out the shiny knitting needle, because that's nice and easy to pull out, and I've now got space to pull out my dowel as well. You can do it with 2 knitting needles as well. And that's made us our first roll of fibre. So it's all the fibres are going into there in a spiral form. So theoretically we can do a long draw technique and produce a woolen style yarn from this. They're a little bit more tightly wrapped than some would like for this. If you put less fibre in, they stay a lot more open and a lot less lofty. So I'm just going to change the camera angle so you can see it from my perspective and my point of view, so that you can get a better idea of exactly what I'm trying to do. But that's what we're ending up with. So we've changed the camera angle so that you can see what I'm doing from the front. These wisps of fibre are where I pulled off the last rolag and are where we're ready to start again. So I trap those wisps of fibre between my dowel and my knitting needle, and I just turn it round a few times, and you can see we've trapped some fibres in place. If I turn and roll, if it's sliding a bit, just persist and it will work. So you can see I'm bracing my thumbs against there and pulling back. Brace and pull. Brace and pull. If you get around to where the handle is, you may need to make sure that your knitting needle isn't quite so long that it gets in the way. When you think you've got enough fibre on, just stop, turn it round a few times in your hand to break. We've left our wispy edge there ready for the next one. So we're now ready to slide out our knitting needle and then remove our dowel, and that's now ready to spin. So you just keep going like that, carrying on emptying the drum. The last one can be a little bit wispy as the drum starts to get a bit emptier, but it's all still perfectly usable fibre. So here's what we've made today. I hope it's given you a few ideas, and I hope it's given you some ways that you can use your drum card to get some really nice, easy to spin, beautifully prepared fibre. Drum cards are great at taking odds and ends that you've been saving because they're too good to get rid of, but haven't ever known what exactly you're going to do with them. If you're in need of any of the extra bits and pieces that'll just give those blends a little bit of extra something, then the link to my shop, Hilltop Cloud, is in the description below, and please do come and take a look. We ship worldwide and have been doing for the past 10 years. If you've enjoyed this video, do take a look at the ones that are on the rest of this channel. There's all sorts of ones mostly focused around spinning, and if you're interested in becoming a better spinner, I teach online workshops and courses which are partly video based, partly picture based, partly text based. They have been running for the past year now, and people have been really enjoying them and feeling like they've been getting loads out of them. And again, there'll be a link to that in the description below. Happy spinning, everybody!